Welcome back to another mini episode of my podcast, The Authentic Man podcast, with me, your host, David Chambers. Today I'm going to talk about something that comes up quite often in my work. These mini episodes, actually, these are things that come up in my work that I do with men very often. If you're listening to this and you're like, man, I've just chowed through 3-4 of those recently. The short episodes, that maybe, you want to dive in and do some work with me. At the moment, I'm actually full at this present time in terms of one-to-one, but I've got a group program called Breaking the Chains of Avoidance, which is starting on the 17th September, running for 12 weeks. And inside that program /container/community, I'm really taking men through the steps that are needed to really create deep intimacy in a relationship. And obviously one of those is sexual intimacy, is cultivating deep sexual intimacy and spark and connection and desire and all those wonderful things, and how we do that in relationship, as well as taking you through some communication protocols to how you can really communicate powerfully. I'm going to take you through some of my systems and dynamics that I use with my clients, as well as the leadership, the kind of embodied masculine, authentic masculine leadership, whatever you want to call it. It's the leadership aspect of a relationship, or how a man shows up in a relationship, that is vitally needed inside a relationship. Because if you don't have the capacity to lead, you're always going to struggle to really stay in relationship and be desirable to women, to be honest. So you can check that out. It's going to be in the show notes. There's going to be a link there to find out more about that. So initiating sex. This is something that a lot of men and women, actually a lot of women I speak to, through whether it's my partner Orsa's clients or the women that speak to me online or I notice online, we really struggle to initiate sex. Often, there's really, for women, it's kind of twofold. Actually, what I really see, and this might sound harsh, is a lot of women are very scared of rejection when it comes to sex and dating, or they don't know what to do, like how to initiate sex or how to initiate dating with a man. And we traditionally, in our Western societies and most of the world, still see the initiation of sex and dating as a man's responsibility. I don't necessarily think that's a healthy thing to do inside a relationship, or at all, actually. I won't get into it now, but I really believe that there's a huge liberation for women when they're not waiting for a man to initiate with them, and they take that power on in themselves, and it creates confidence in multiple aspects of their sexuality. Instead of just being passive, they become active. But I'm going to talk to men mainly here because I mainly work with men, but ladies who listen to this, I'm sure it'll be beneficial to you. So one of the three, I'm going to go talk about the pain points, the things that stop you from initiating sex, right? The first one is fear of rejection. I mentioned just there, right? Fear of rejection is one of the most fundamental fears that humans have, like being rejected, being ostracized, being embarrassed. It all kind of comes with the same family, in my opinion. And what it does, it creates a barrier between you and your partner, and you and intimacy, right? It leaves you feeling disconnected, and it really just shows up as like hesitancy, like not making the first move, overthinking your partner's reactions, I don't know what the word is like catastrophizing what will happen if you do instigate, or often avoiding instigating through being like, I'll next time. It's like kicking the can down the road, right? It's a really common one, and I work with a lot of men about this fear of rejection, because it's such a common thing that happens across the board in dating, inside of sex and relationships. It could be going for jobs, it could be talking to new people, going to new places. This fear we have that when we get there, we're going to be rejected. And I'm going to talk about how you start to tackle that towards the end of the episode. Another thing that kind of gets in the way is a lack of confidence, low self-esteem. I believe most people have low self-esteem, in my opinion. Most people have low self-esteem. Even the people who you see who are highly successful, and I know this just through some of the work I've done with people who are like actors and businessmen and multimillionaires and all these sorts of things, and they have low self-esteem. That really gets in the way of sex. Like, we don't feel good about who we are ourselves. And I've noticed more and more with men what the fears are around that, the connectors that are to do with body image. And this like, I'm not a good looking man, or don't have the right body, or whatever it may be. And I get that, because we are bombarded with messages around society around what our body should look like, though many of those messages are actually contradictory a lot of the time. If you really pay attention, there's multiple contradictory messages, and your mind has chosen to believe or pay attention to the ones that shame you in some way, right? Sometimes the low self-confidence comes from negative past experiences sexually. That might be perceived negative experiences or, real negative experiences. And, there's a fine line between those two things. So that leaves people feeling uncomfortable about how their body is or about their ability to perform. When we're talking about, especially men, we are often schooled into believing we are just our performance, especially our sexual performance, meaning our ability to get hard and stay hard and so forth. So these get in the way. And this really stops us from having like a positive outlook on sex, right? And it makes us passive. So we're waiting for the thing to happen that we want, i.e. someone to initiate sex, and everyone becomes passive. And then if you have two people who are passive in initiating sex doesn't happen. That's something as a coach who has worked with people around this stuff for a number of years, I can tell you, when two people are passive, nothing happens because, you can imagine two people sitting down on a bed being like, okay, if they try, then I'm in. And then neither of them are really trying, and both of them are taking the signals to mean rejection or a no, because no one's really putting themselves out there for that. So that just leads to no sex happening, right? And, this can be very frustrating inside a relationship. And then what also kind of happens is when you then talk about the fact that you didn't have sex, or you haven't been having sex, and you're like, oh, you could have tried this time and that time, that can also lead to more shame because you're like, oh my God, I'm so useless, I didn't miss that thing. So there's this kind of spiral that can occur, right? And then I think one of the ones that I think is really impactful inside of relationships is this like lack of understanding and awareness on our partner's like desires, sexual desires and sexual pleasure, right? So this kind of comes in the guise of you don't really know because you don't talk about it, right? One of you or both of you are nervous to talk about sex. Most people, to be honest, are quite nervous to talk about sex. And if you don't know how to create a safe container for people to talk about sex, that's also another thing. But don't talk about sex, and then you don't really know what turns each other on, so you don't really know what to do, so you don't really feel very confident, and then you try something and it doesn't go the way you want it to, or you don't get the response that you expect you should, which is dangerous in itself just because you have an expectation, and very rarely the things you're expecting someone to act in a way that you think they should, and then when they don't, you assume that means they didn't enjoy it, when actually they might have enjoyed it, but they just reacted differently to how your mind had made it up. And we don't talk about sex. So you don't talk about it. There's no understanding of desires. There's no understanding of pleasure, of what makes your partner feel pleasure or you feel pleasure, and you don't swap this information. Then that means that, both you're in the dark. So then you don't feel confident. Then you feel reluctant to have sex. You feel there's unmet needs. People get upset when there's unmet needs, especially sexual needs. And then that can compound the lack of confidence and so forth. You're getting the picture, right? Why is it important? Well, sexual satisfaction is actually one of the key markers to relationship happiness and joy. Like people who have good sex lives, they often report that they have a happy relationship. It's a very important part of a relationship, right? And if you neglect it, that's at your peril, basically. Not to fill with dread, but this is someone who's worked with many men and couples who have not had sex for anything from 6 months to almost 2 years. And if you're in that realm, not always, but when it's on the longer end, depending how long the relationship's been going on the longer end, one of the partners, if or not both of them, are thinking about leaving. It's nearly always what I've seen with the people I've spoken to. So it's really important. Like having a good, thriving sex life is the outcome of communication, is the outcome of vulnerability, is the outcome of like compassion and empathy for one another as well, in my opinion, what I see. So what can you do about it? You need to discuss what you like. This is a really, really vital part of it. If you have the idea that your partner should just know what you like, you're fucking crazy. I said it. Yeah. If you believe your partner should just know what you like and you should never have to mention it to them, you're acting in a way is really immature, because that's what babies do. And I have a little baby. He can't speak. So he just hopes that by making some sound, I guess what he wants. And that's okay, because he generally only wants like one of 4 things. But as an adult, we have to openly discuss the things, even if it's uncomfortable, right? So we have to lean into this, like lean into vulnerability and so forth, and lean into communicating what's there. And then the second part of this kind of this expression and communication is being able to listen to what your partner says, right? Listening without judgment, listening without critiquing, listening without telling them are wrong or taking it personally. For example, your partner says that they like to, I don't know, man, they like a particular type of being dominated, right? Your partner says she likes to be dominated. A very common, not request, common kink, fantasy, whatever. And you suddenly hear that as like, oh no, I've never been dominant. You say this on your head. I've never been dominant. I've always been, quite gentle and quite soft. That means she's always hated the sex. So upon hearing that, you shut down, you stop talking, or you get defensive, or you even attack her and be like, why do you want that? That's weird. Like, I don't think that's right. Like, that's, that sounds rapey to me, or something like that. That is not how you listen. That is a terrible listening. And if you listen like that, then you really should, come and work with me in some capacity, because listening is such an important skill. So then what you want to do is listen to the way is like, okay, what is this person trying to tell me? They're trying to tell me what they enjoy. Okay, I want to give them what they enjoy, even if it's feel uncomfortable to me, and that's something for you guys to also talk about, is like having a spectrum of like a no, something I'm not willing to try, something that's a maybe, and something that's a yes. And it's also important to understand underneath your no is like, why is that a no? Right. And I think in couples, I think it's perfectly reasonable to want to know why. That might be, it's a no because, you want to have a threesome, and they're a no because they don't want to share you with anybody or anything like that. And that might be fine for the two of you, right? But that's a good understanding there. And then also inquiring, like, the person who has the desire or sexual preference or so forth, if there is a no from the other partner, asking like, what is the desired feeling and emotion and experience that you want from that thing? So say, for instance, it is a threesome. You might say, yeah, I really want a threesome because I want to, feel like loads and loads of pleasure. I want to feel really like love being just like doted on and 2 women just giving me pleasure. I want to feel that. Okay, cool. So you want to feel a lot of pleasure. You want to feel like a kind of not like a king. What's the word I'm looking for? Just like you want to feel, really this devotion from 2 people. How can you create, the question then for the 2 of you is, how can you create a scenario where you get that experience and you don't have to bring a second person? I don't know, maybe, you do some stuff with cam girls or something like that that's okay and within the boundaries of a relationship. This is the important thing, because there's more to it than that. So talking about sex, and then also listening, and then like listening deeper, that's below the thing to get to understanding. Another action is slowly stretching your comfort zone. So with the initiating of sex, your comfort zone is probably quite small. Is there stretching it? So it might be just saying certain things to your partner, saying that you find them really attractive, or little compliments, or flirting, or looking them deep in their eyes and saying, what you really love about them, and so forth. So it's like to do these little gestures and do them more and more, and to really notice that it's very rare. You might be able to hear ice cream van in the background. You might be able to notice that you nearly always get a positive reception. Yeah. Especially if it's what you're saying is calibrated to the moment, calibrated to the person you're with, and loving, and coming from a good place. You're going to get a good gesture. And it's to notice, like, what's the response? And again, it's not to project the response, because sometimes when we're afraid, we project the response is going to be negative. So it's to notice that as well. I would say also body confidence. Now, body confidence is a tricky one, just because like building body confidence, is everyone builds body confidence differently. Like myself personally, when I feel like I'm in really good shape, I feel body confident, like I'll openly say here, I'm not in the greatest shape I've ever been. I probably might be in like the worst shape I've been in for like 15 or so years, maybe 10 years, definitely the last 10 years. But, I just had a baby, so it's not so easy for me to work out. Excuses. But body confidence, and that might be working out for you. It might be practicing going to spaces where people talk about body confidence and body positivity. It might be for you to grow in body confidence to shut off all your Instagram feed where you've just got people fat shaming and stuff like that. Like, you need to be mindful of how you build your body confidence. I recommend some level of self-love practice around touching and appreciating your body. This came from a friend of mine, or old podcast guest, Merv, who I can't tell you what episode it is, but we talk about body positivity, and he's an expert. He's a body positivity coach and photographer. So that episode is well worth listening to. I'm sure you just search body positivity under my podcast and you'll find it. Some level of self-care, some self-love ritual where you are appreciating your body, even if you're finding one or two things you love and you appreciate, or one or two things you love looking at and appreciating. It's like at least appreciating the fact that your body has brought you this far in life. It's strong, it's capable, and all those things. So it's just like cultivating that relationship where you look at your body positively, right? And for some of us, that will involve exercise and so forth. And some people know. One of the things also to cultivate here is removing sex, as in penetration, off the table. When I find with people and couples, when we remove penetration off the table, that's often the thing they're scared about, like getting that wrong or making mistakes or not getting up or coming too fast, and actually just saying, just take it off the table to reduce the pressure, right? That often really helps. Another thing I'd say also is around reframing rejection. Often we take rejection or someone's no to mean what we did was bad, or what we did was wrong, right? Or we shouldn't have done that thing. When it's more likely that their no is just they don't want that thing right now, or the way you have packaged it, the way you have propositioned it wasn't inspiring to them. Yeah? It is not rejection of you and who you are, and there's something wrong with you. Because when we take things too personally, rejection, it shuts us down and we want to run away. Something I always work with Ben doing is around cultivating more presence in the body, in the moment, and less in the head. And this is one of those things that kind of overarching helps in life. All those moments where you're overthinking and you're like second guessing and you completely miss the cues because you're in your head and you're not in the body, you're not in your senses in the moment, is through these mindfulness practices of coming back to presence and so forth, right? It's like these sorts of things go a really long way. Then the last thing is to pay close attention to your partner, what they love, how they like to be held, how they love to be kissed, how they love to be wooed and seduced. This can be a really good question to ask your partner, to sit down and ask each other. Man, you won't even record it so you can really make sure you know it. And to notice, like, when you hold them, does their body soften? Do they melt into you? Like, oh, they like that. When you touch them, do they kind of soften into the touch, or do they flinch away? When you kiss them, like, in different ways, how does their body respond? When you seduce them in different ways, in different places, right? How do they respond? And you need to be kind of a bit of a like scientist about this, and not just, oh, I tried to seduce her and she didn't like it, that means she doesn't like to be seduced. It's actually to go deeper and go, oh, where were we? We were at home and we were watching TV and she was really into a series. Maybe not to do it when she's really into the series. Or maybe you try to do it in a place that's outdoors, that's inappropriate, or so forth. And it's like looking at the signs of what works and what doesn't work, and taking what works and leaving what doesn't work, right? And it's like being kind of smarter about this instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater every time you try something. That's going to be my last point on this, in initiating sex, because I know this is a really emotive and difficult topic for a lot of people. And like I said, I've got a program, Overcoming Avoidance, which is coming up on the 17th of September. We'll be running Tuesdays, UK time, 7 p.m. through till early December, first week of December. And yeah, if this has been tricky for you, expressing how you feel, free of commitment, you're leaning out when things get serious, these are all things we're going to really tackle inside this, and the ways in which we can create deep intimacy and deep presence with ourselves and our partners. But I'll let you get on with your day. Ciao, ciao.